What's up? I wanted to hop on here, make a video, and explain the event that I'm training for. I know that the Highland Games is far from mainstream. It is one of the other pieces of the puzzle. Whenever you just kind of set your own targets, you end up doing some stuff that a lot of people don't exactly know about. So I just kind of wanted to make a video, explain what the event itself is, to give a little bit better context on what I am training for. So the Scottish Highland Games is really the original version of the track and field. So I'm competing in 9 different events in one day, all of them being throwing events that have some amount of root or connection to the throws that we know now, the shot put, discus, things of that nature. So the and kind of going in traditional order of the 9 events, there are 3 events that are done twice. They're done at heavy and a light. So those are your first 3 events typically. So the first one would be a shot put looking event. There are 2 versions of this. Like I said, there's a heavy and a lighter one. But the other piece of this one is the heavy version is called the Braemar throw. And that is about in the ballpark of, all this is a little bit inexact, the ballpark of a 22-pound stone, actually a rock. And if you've ever seen shot put, you see they start in the back of the circle. They have a technique that they use to advance into the front. There's a few different styles, and they get their stone put. On the Braemar, it's a straight power position. So you go to the front of the board, there's no approach, and it is a standing throw. The open stone is what we would know as shot put, except it is a 16-pound stone, not a round ball. So those are your first 2 events. You've got the Braemar stone and you have the open stone. From there, you typically would go to your weight for distance. Movement wise, it is similar to the discus, but the implements are very different and the space you work in is different. So there's also a heavy and light version of this. For my class, the adaptive class, the heavy and light mimic the men's lightweight division, so under 200. So I happen to be under 200 and adaptive. So my weights actually didn't change. The heavy weight for distance is a 42-pound weight for me, and then the lightweight is 28. This is one that has absolutely given me the most trouble of any event. It's the one that I probably have the least understanding of in terms of like really understanding how to execute the throw, which it's bad because this is a big challenge and probably where I'm the furthest off from these 2 records. But the other piece of the puzzle is simple learning is going to yield me results. Like I can get some basic stuff understood better, and that's going to add distance to my throw on its own. And on top of that, I did get out and practice this one, and it is the best it's felt thus far, which is pretty crazy. So sometimes some time off does good for you. It allows you to kind of clear your mind, relearn it in a sense. And so that was pretty cool, getting that practice out there. This to me is my gatekeeping event. I have to nail this event. I have to be ready to go here. If I am feeling good on these 2, I'm very confident in what will happen in the remainder of the events. And again, there are 9 events, but one of them doesn't have a world record attached. So when we talk about going 8 for 8, I will still throw all 9 events. It's just one of them doesn't have a good way to keep a world record. From there, you would typically go to the hammer throw. So equating to like the wire hammer, the big difference here is in the wire hammer, you would see them work through the circle, cover some distance on some rotations. On the Scottish hammer, instead of it being on a wire, it's typically on a PVC handle, and you are actually back to the field. And this one's got probably the most like fun equipment because I wear a boot that has a blade in it that I dig into the ground as a piece of leverage. Everyone loves the hammer boots. So there's also a heavy and light for my adaptive division. It is 16 pounds for the heavy, 12 for the light. And some of these numbers don't sound big, but they feel much heavier than they sound because it's not just like a straight static lift. The weight's not just like in my hand. I'm not just like curling or pressing or deadlifting any of these weights. The weight itself isn't massive as far as straight weight, but as it gets moving, that force multiplies. And that becomes a big piece of that puzzle. So again, a 16-pound heavy hammer doesn't sound crazy, but it's heavier than it sounds. And the interesting one is this was my most adjusted event moving to adaptive. So I threw able-bodied for just a little bit to start my Highland Games career, if you will, and then ended up losing my leg, and here we are. This is the one that feels like the best adjusted. So obviously, like, things get moved for adaptive athletes. Like top weights don't mean the same thing to an able-bodied athlete. So our weights get adjusted, and some of mine didn't. Like my weight for distance and my weight over bar did not get adjusted. It's the same weight I've always been throwing. This one did get adjusted, and I will say that the light hammer feels the exact same level of challenge as the light hammer, and the heavy hammer feels about the same level of challenge as the heavy hammer used to. It was actually kind of crazy when I got on there. I kind of thought it was going to be a little bit of an overcorrection. I was like, no, this actually feels dead on. It feels almost the exact same. So that was kind of a cool bit of perspective. Not a lot of people have thrown in both divisions. So like I said, found that one pretty interesting. So right there, we've knocked out 6 events. We have 2 stones, 2 weights for distances, and 2 hammers. So now we're left with 3 more events. There are 2 height events, and then there's the caber toss. So the height events, so the light hammer is one of the events that I own a world record in already. The other 2 world records that I currently have are the heights. So both the weight over bar and the sheaf toss. So the weight over bar, that is a 42-pound weight, and it is really simple. The heights are also kind of the most fun ones to throw for me. And for a lot of throwers, because it's the one that the crowds get into. They understand it. It's really simple to watch, even if you don't know anything about the sport. It's really simple. Did it go over the bar? It did? Great. It counts. If it didn't, it didn't. Sometimes throwing out into the field, they don't really understand what a big distance is for that event or for that thrower, and you don't know until it's been measured. So, like I said, so we got the height. So the weight over the bar, you're going to stand pretty much right under the bar. It looks more similar to a kettlebell swing than it actually is, but it's a very good base to start thinking about how this one gets executed. I broke this record at the Arnold this past year. This past year. The Arnold hasn't happened yet. And like I said, this one's a fun one for me to throw, but it's also really natural. The sheaf, I have a lot more fun training because it's challenged me a lot more. But again, I do think it is somewhat up my alley in terms of where my physical skills are. So again, so the sheaf is, it's goofy. I've got a pitchfork. I put it into this cube or rectangle shaped bag filled with twine. It's typically about 16 pounds. And there's a technique where I'm hucking this thing up and over. And then the last one's the caber toss. So this is the one that I start with when someone says, what is that? This is the one I start with because almost everybody's seen the picture of the big dude in a beard wearing a kilt, and he's got a tree right here tucked in, or he's throwing the tree. So that's the caber toss. The really unique piece of this, and this is the one that has no world record because you can't really compare cabers, fields, and turns. You can't continue because it's not a distance throw or a height throw. It's actually, in a sense, an accuracy throw. It is scored, so as I turn it over, it is scored as it turns over on a clock face. So like a 12 straight ahead is a perfect score. If it comes off to the side, one or the other, they get a judgment or a score based on where that sits on the clock face as a way to compare turns. So this one's a very fun one for the crowd to watch. Some athletes love it. Some athletes love to be done with it. I go back and forth on it. I've had some games where it's been really fun and other games where it's just been kind of meh. Kind of depends on the energy of the day and the group you're throwing with. For me, this is one, like I said, that's not for a world record, but I'll definitely be throwing it on game day. So these are the Highland Games. I hope this makes a little more sense now as I talk about some of the stuff that I'm doing with training. They are constantly looking for people who are brand new to come in. I came in with absolutely no throwing experience. I was not the size of human that typically would ever get asked to throw. This is a very challenging sport, but there's a lot of progress to be made. And if you're good with progress, this becomes a sport that it's fun to play with because there's 9 throws to get figured out. So again, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you've got any questions, comments, anything that I could take care of maybe in a future video, please leave them in the comments. I appreciate that. And thank you very much for all the support.